Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon session. We are recording Thursday, May 20th, 2021. And let us recap what we covered this morning in terms of scheduling recurring weekly meetings on the Chrysalis calendar. And this morning we chunked out 8 different topics, and I'm happy to include even others. So as we go, please definitely listen for what I'm sharing and see what you think about that. Add your feedback there. If there's something missing that you're saying, hey, we should cover this instead, or cover this as well, or whatever, then let's just please speak up, and we can address that. Fair enough? All right. So please jump in. Let's make this a share fest. Okay. So basically, I've come up with 9 different topics. And if you want to take notes, I would encourage that, but it's certainly not necessary. But I think it'll help if we all kind of take notes and each kind of create both a map of what I'm talking about, but also add your own stuff. Hey, what about this? What about that? All right. So I'm going to give a brief overview, and it's somewhat fractal, as you'll see, and each part references the other parts. So going from 1 through 9, topics 1 through 9. Topic 1 is the overall story of the chrysalis, right? And the overall story of the chrysalis contains 3 parts: the caterpillar, the chrysalis, and the butterfly. Caterpillar is where we've been the last 12,000 years, this growing caterpillar of consumption and destruction. The chrysalis is where we are now in the early stages in which we have tremendous urgency to accelerate and develop the body of imaginal cells and the connectivity between the imaginal cells, so that we together can co-create our path forward and orchestrate a path forward for all of life on Earth, for saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth. And the butterfly, then the third part, the butterfly, is where we need to get to. And the story within the chrysalis is largely a story of collective superintelligence. There's a lot of facets to the chrysalis, and one very important one, is the imaginal cells coming together and organizing ourselves into a collective superintelligence with which we can not only come up with the solutions, but also address the destructive forces, address the addiction to the game of the caterpillar, which is in the process of breaking down, but hasn't broken down yet completely, and is still churning away, chopping down trees, burning down forests, doing animal agriculture, military industrial complex, wars, deception, totalitarianism, fascism, etc. So a lot of our focus is on collective superintelligence. Within that, we chunk that out into phases. Phase 1 being phase 1 of collective superintelligence being exactly where we're at right now, with us forming our own chrysalis calendar and many other sectors within the chrysalis of imaginal cells forming their own calendars. Phase 2 is bringing these calendars together so that we essentially form a universal calendar of all the imaginal cells and all of our meetings for all these topics that we're talking about, and many, many more, thousands of topics, tens of thousands of topics. And this universal calendar, which will bring us together because we'll all be able to see all the other meetings, and different imaginal cells will be able to cluster here, there, and everywhere throughout the topics that we'll be covering within the broader chrysalis. That is when the collective superintelligence really comes into its own as a superintelligence. Right now we have collective intelligence. What we have right here is collective intelligence, us talking with each other and bringing our perspectives here. And in fact, in a little bit, I'd like to play a glass beads game where we bounce around from person to person, and maybe we talk for 1 minute each. Whoever wants to play, and you can always take a pass. It's not mandatory. Talking is never mandatory here, as we all know, always optional. So that's, you know, the next phase of collective superintelligence is this universal calendar, a universal taxonomy, and the beginnings of planetary governance. And then phase 3 of collective superintelligence is what I call full-blown collective superintelligence, and we can talk about that. And then there's the products of collective superintelligence. One of those, well, I kind of think about those in 3 different phases of solutions. And you know, I don't know if solutions is quite the best word to encompass all of it. It's solutions and creations, co-creations that we'll all be co-creating. And well, I'll talk about those 3 phases, not right now. I'll get into that later. And then finally, really zeroing in on where we are right now at the beginning of the first phase of collective superintelligence, which is chrysalis calendars, and focusing right here where we are, blooming where we're planted, and focusing on our own chrysalis calendar. So that is what I call topic number 1, the story of the chrysalis. Yes, Michael, please.
I wonder, question quick, what is phase 3 of chrysalis?
Yeah, so there's 2 groups of 3, right? There's the story of the chrysalis is broken into what I call 3 books. Book 1, book 2, book 3. Book 1 is the caterpillar, book 2 is the chrysalis, and book 3 is the butterfly, right? Now, I also talked about 3 phases of collective superintelligence. Phase 1 is chrysalis calendars, plural. That's our chrysalis calendar and many other calendars within the chrysalis, but each essentially operating on their own independently, right? Phase 2 of collective superintelligence is where these calendars come together to form a universal calendar, and in the process, begin to build a universal taxonomy, or more thoroughly, a universal wixonomy, right? Which is something we've explored in the past, kind of a wiki taxonomy, but in both cases, a universal taxonomy of topics that covers all the topics that we need to cover, which is a vast set of topics, and the beginnings of planetary governance. And then phase 3 of collective superintelligence is what I call full-blown collective superintelligence. And we can dream into that Um, and I'm holding my fire on that until we get to that topic. But right now I'm just kind of giving a broad overview of the story of the Chrysalis. So we have book one, The Caterpillar, which really focuses on the game, the what I refer to as the all-day Monopoly game of infinite hoarding on a finite planet, and all the destruction that that brings, including exponential planetary overheating, destruction of the biosphere, etc. That's book one, The Caterpillar, of the big story. Book two is The Chrysalis. Book three is The Butterfly, and the butterfly in turn has three phases. So it's very fractal-like, right? Anyway, this is just my kind of conceptualization of it, and that's why I want to talk through it. So first pass is the whole story, and so one of the topics that I want to have on a weekly basis is we set aside, an hour or two to talk about the story of the Chrysalis as a whole, right? Have that big, broad overview. So that's topic number one, is the story of the Chrysalis. Topic number two is now drilling down into book one of the story, which is The Caterpillar, focusing on the game, the all-day Monopoly game, that we are all trapped in to various degrees in various different ways. Bill Gates is trapped in it. Folks who are slaves are trapped in it. We're all trapped in it. We're all trapped in the game. And therein we can explore the roots of the game, the details of the destruction of the biosphere, the details of exponential planetary overheating and its implications. And, it's not a very fun story. It's not a pretty picture, but we need to acknowledge reality and understand and diagnose where we're at, where we've come from, and its implications. And that will help us to determine exactly what we need to do within book two, The Chrysalis. So the first topic is the overall story. The second topic is book one. Remember, book one, book two, book three of the story. Book one being The Caterpillar. So the third topic is book two, The Chrysalis, where we are now. And this is a story of imaginal cells working, I'll just say working exponentially, because we're growing exponentially in number. We're coming together exponentially. Our connections are growing exponentially. And within the Chrysalis collective superintelligence, it's largely a story of collective superintelligence, of us coming together and figuring things out together, figuring out all manner of solutions, from feeding everyone, which is this topic space where we are now, this afternoon meeting, that we normally talk about food healers. Now we're talking about the story of the Chrysalis and all of its parts, solar radiation management for cooling the planet, and also liberating humanity from the game, right? And food healers plays a huge, huge role in that. Within book two, The Chrysalis, I also was talking earlier today about using kind of an analogy or metaphor of Apollo 13, as we were talking about. Here we are on this spaceship called planet Earth, which is malfunctioning, and severely so. And but unlike the Apollo 13 mission, where it was just a machinery that was malfunctioning, here we have a planet that's malfunctioning, overrun by Klingons, who are clinging on to the game, clinging on to this, what Daniel Pinchbeck calls the possession trance, and attacking the imaginal cells, right? And so we can explore those myriad facets of the game. So, that's big picture for the Chrysalis. And so that's the third topic, is book 2, the Chrysalis. Now from there, I get into a few related topics within the Chrysalis. One is, and this would be the fourth topic, of collective superintelligence. And we've talked about this quite a bit as a network of networks. This conversation that we're having right here is a network of people, right? We're all together. You can see us on the screen. There's, 7 of us here in the room, and we're talking with each other. This is a network of individuals. A conversation is a network of individuals. Therefore, a network of conversations is therefore a network of networks. And that's where we need to get to have full-blown collective superintelligence. And we've envisioned that quite a bit in previous meetings. And we've talked about having a universal calendar where we have visibility into all of our meetings, transcripts of all those meetings, even real-time transcription and indexing and search, so people can find exactly what meetings they're looking for. If they have certain alerts that they want to program in and say, hey, listen, whenever someone's talking about solar radiation management, let me know, right? I want to jump in there and connect. So that's full-blown collective superintelligence. Is kind of, at this moment, it's science fiction because we haven't brought it to reality yet, but we're so close in so many ways, right? There's so many people meeting on Zoom, having these conversations in Zoom, in Clubhouse, on Reddit, on all these different platforms, and yet we're totally fragmented, right? So full-blown collective superintelligence is all these conversations, but deeply integrated and with tremendous flexibility and mobility within the network of conversation, so that people can zip around like covalent electrons, just kind of zooming around and really weaving us all together, right?
And the calendar is Heisenberg looking at it. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. No.
Yeah. No. Good. Yeah, and as we envision the coming together of this collective superintelligence, I sort of see it as the coming together of a patchwork quilt, right? The first stage in creating a patchwork quilt is you create the patches. And at first the patches are all separate. So just imagine the whole big living room floor covered with all these different patches, but they're not yet woven together, right? They're just individual patches. The Chrysalis calendar that we're creating right here is one of those patches. But in our case, instead of having a living room floor covered with all these patches that we can see, we can't even see the other patches. We know of a few of them, but each patch really represents a cluster within the chrysalis, a cluster of imaginal cells, right? See, each of us, what makes us powerful right here, and what gives us so much energy and joy and power and potential, is the fact that we're together, that we're a cluster. Pre-COVID, we were a bunch of isolated individuals. Before the advent of the Zoomosphere, we were a bunch of isolated individuals, basically just going crazy in an insane world and not really knowing what to do about it. Now we're a bunch of individuals going crazy, but at least we get to go crazy together, we get to come together, you know, and go crazy together.
That's one way to see it. But the other day we were saying, we know that people think that we're crazy, but as long as we know we are not, then that's good. We are the ones with all the forward ideas, which is different, right, than the crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a funny way to put it.
Yeah. But anyway,
My friend at Marvin's funeral said, he held up a couple walnuts. He said, we're all kind of nuts here at the funeral. So I heard that.
That's funny. And the world can see it like that, but we know, we just have that consciousness of good and are, you know, a little more awakened maybe than others, and see that we got to do something all together. But what's crazy about that, right? Nothing.
no, I was just, yeah,
no,
no,
I
I was
know
just,
that was funny.
yeah. But anyway, so back to the patchwork. But we have faith that there are lots and lots of clusters like us coming together. And I have faith that many of those are putting together their own calendars and making those public. Some of them on Trove, most of them elsewhere, just because Trove is a relatively new thing, right? But I also have faith that these different calendars, these different patches in the emerging quilt will sooner or later, and hopefully sooner, come together and form the quilt being the universal calendar, right? And because then we'll really have visibility, direct visibility through the universal calendar into all these other clusters. And these each different cluster, each different patch of the quilt has its own perspective on the world, its own history, its own demographics. Many of these are forming in different countries, in different languages, different cultures, right? Some of them are clusters comprised of scientists, others engineers, others architects, others visionaries, others artists, others people who work in government. I mean, just people from all different walks of life. And as we come together into one quilt of clusters with the universal calendar, then people like us and all kinds of people will be able to zip around like these covalent electrons and connect with clusters that they hadn't connected with before. And also with transcription, we'll have this massive and exponentially growing database of conversations with their transcripts, which will be searchable, right? So people will be able to search, hey, I want to find out who's talking about SRM with mirrors in the ocean, right? Which is one of my favorite topics. But I need to know who are the other people who are talking about it so I can connect with them and say, hey, where are you at? You know, let's coordinate. Let's have, you know, some big meetings where we all get together and we share where we're at with our development of this concept, right? So that's kind of the evolution that I see for the collective superintelligence. Is we first and foremost, we bloom where we're planted and we build out our patch. We make our patch of the quilt the best patch that we can possibly make. And we broadcast it to the world as best we can. We invite the world to come play with us, come to our meetings of our Chrysalis calendar. We'd like as many people as possible to come. We'd love for the whole world to come. That'd be a great problem to have, because then we could divide and organize ourselves into breakout rooms, into different Zoom rooms, right? The more the merrier. But one of the big lessons for me of the past, year plus is that other people, just like we're blooming where we're planted, other people are blooming where they're planted, right? I kind of had this fantasy, oh, we'll do the block party and then all these people will come and, you know, we'll just be one giant happy family of collective intelligence. But the reality is we're still, you know, separate. I mean, just like here I am Thursday afternoon in my home, and what am I doing? Am I zipping around to other people's Zoom rooms? No, I'm blooming where I'm planted, in my own patch of the quilt, our own patch of the quilt. Well, guess what, Jamin? Newsflash, Jamin, other people are doing the same thing. They're just blooming where they're planted, right? So we're each developing our own clusters within the chrysalis. And the next phase of evolution, as we get our own, all of us get up our meetings up on our own respective calendars, one calendar per patch, right? They're doing the same thing. And then we'll be able, the next phase is stitch all the patches together, right? I think it feels to me that that's the right way to think about this, that's a right way to think about this. That's very helpful because it'll help guide our own evolution. First focusing on our patch and then then working with the others to bring the patches together, right? And all of this that I'm articulating is a picture of decentralization. Thank you, Miranda. It's a picture of decentralization. There's no one central ringleader saying, okay, you know, all you patches have to do this now, and now you all have to do that, right? We're all just kind of doing our own thing, but having faith that we're going to find each other, right?
Well, I share the vision in creating all those patches and linking them all up. I think you have a great plan. Where do I sign up?
Thank you, thank you. Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, let's talk about it some more, because I think this is really the key to the whole thing. You know, we're talking about some really big solutions that we need to cook up in the coming, you know, weeks and months and years, and I just don't see how we're going to do it without collective superintelligence, without this patchwork of all these chrysalis calendars, each representing the conversations, the open conversations within each cluster of the chrysalis. And how else are we going to do it other than bringing these clusters together through
It's
patching
like
together?
Eugene Krantz dispatched all of his teams. He had teams in all these different departments, or what were they for Apollo? Were they little think tanks, or you
Well,
know,
we need,
one guy says you get the duct tape, the other guy says get the cardboard. What was it again?
yeah, and we need to watch that documentary. In fact, I kind of have a good mind of screen sharing it and watching some of it this evening even. We can get a start on it in a little bit after but I want to pass it around a bit and really hear from everyone. So please, everyone who's game, please just start jumping in. We could do a glass beads thing where I call on each person who wants to be called on, right? In turn, we take turns talking for just 1 minute each, just sharing what we're getting from all this and what's coming to us, right? We played the glass beads game earlier today. It went very well. Anyway, show me a sign if you'd like to play. No pressure. There's never pressure to speak here in the conversation. James's game. Okay, thank you, James. Oh shoot, I've got a call coming in. Let me take this real quick and then I'll be back. I'm going to pause recording. Okay, back to recording after a pause. I'm just going to put in the chat the 10 different topics that I'm suggesting for our chrysalis calendar. For our chrysalis calendar, following 10 recurring meetings on different days, of course, some of which could be on the same day, some of which will be one right after the other. So one is the story of the chrysalis, which is what we're talking about here with these 10 topics. Two is, you know, book one of the story, which is the caterpillar. That would be a whole topic under itself, with focus on what I'm calling the game, the all-day Monopoly game that we're trapped in. Okay. The third would and the all-day Monopoly game and its effects, its destruction, etc. The third would be the book two, which is the Chrysalis. Right? Remember, book one is the caterpillar. Book two is the Chrysalis. Even though the story of the Chrysalis is the whole of it, book two is the Chrysalis itself within that story. And here we talk about Apollo 13, which we'll view either later today or tomorrow, and we can chip away at it. We have the Imaginals, all of us. We have the Klingons, who are trying to perpetuate the old, etc. And then within book two, the fourth topic is collective superintelligence as a whole, including the vision, right? What I call full-blown CSI, collective superintelligence, right? And then the fifth topic is, no, actually, I'm going to put in parentheses first. There are 3 phases of CSI, of collective superintelligence. One is Chrysalis calendars, plural. I put a capital S, and those are basically the patches in the patches in the emergent quilt, right?
Phase 2, bringing calendars together.
That's right. Phase 2 is the universal calendar. That is the quilt, right?
Universal taxonomy.
Thank you. Yep. One of our students in the front row has been listening and taking good notes. Thank you. Universal taxonomy and
Wixonomy.
Wixonomy. Yep. And universal governance. So that's phase 2. And then phase 3 is what I'm calling full-blown CSI, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are the 3 phases of CSI. The 5th topic is where we focus on phase 1 of CSI, right? Which is Chrysalis calendars. Notice I put a big S for plural because it's many different calendars, right? There could be thousands of them, tens of thousands. And then topic number 6 is phase 2 of CSI, right? See above. Topic number 7 is, okay, so all this CSI is with a view to design and implementation, design and building the butterfly. And I'm just going to call it part 1, which I'm also calling the dark side of the moon, because that was the first part of Apollo 13, is what do we do to prepare the emergent butterfly for its voyage around the dark side of the moon. 8 is design and building the butterfly, part 2, emergence from darkness. When the Apollo 13 comes out from around the dark side of the moon and into the light, that's where we really build it out even further. And then eventually, okay, Diane's entering the room. So let's say hello to her, give her a nice conversation welcome. I'm also going to put and part 3. Hey, Diane, welcome. Right. Welcome. You're on mute, and that's okay.
There you go. Is that better? Yeah.
Much better, much better. Hey, and yeah. All right. So in the chat, I've got those 8 topics so far. Actually, the 9th topic is, I had put it above, but the 9th topic is part 3, the butterfly comes home. And that's when Apollo 13 is finally peacefully, safely home. And that's, I might as well talk about that now, the 7, 8, and 9. So 7 is really, what do we need to do first, right? I mean, the ship is breaking apart as we speak, overheating as we speak. Species are going extinct as we speak. And so topic number 7, which is part 1 of the butterfly, is what do we do to begin to stabilize the ship for the next phase of the journey, right? We still haven't repaired the ship. We still haven't, completed the butterfly. And we're not even ready to do so yet. But what do we do for starters? What's part 1 of building out the butterfly? How do we begin to stabilize the ship? And for me, and part of this is, so much of this is self-referential, of all these different topics is self-referential and fractal-like, is that part 1 of the butterfly is collective superintelligence. And that's not just building the computer, of building the quilt of all the calendars. It's also plugging in the computer, its energy supply, its energy source, which is food, right? And, food healers. But getting a good energy source, plant-based food, no more of this animal agriculture. So anyway, so part 1 is really building the collective superintelligence and plugging in the computer, right, to a good energy source for all, which also constitutes the beginning of the liberation from the game, right? I don't think feeding everyone will completely liberate us all, but it's a huge, huge, huge start. And then part 2, emergence from darkness, is what we'll be exploring as we get into the Apollo documentary, right? Which we'll watch in a little bit here. Maybe we'll watch some of that. And then part 3, the butterfly comes home. That's after. So part 2, first of all, part 2 is where we implement SRM. We go vegan. We restore the biosphere. We cool the planet. We clean up the oceans, right? We take care of everyone. We take care of all human needs. And then it's like, okay, now the butterfly has taken flight.
I wondered if I might interject one quick idea after you're done, please.
Oh, no, interject now. Go for it.
I thought if we wrapped soda bottles with Mylar, turn potato chip wrappers inside out and tape them to the plastic bottles, we could float them in the ocean and reflect some sun over.
I love your thinking. And in fact, going back over the past 2.5 years, so many times I used to open up, potato chip bags and show the reflective material. And I said, this is all we need, right? This stuff is so cheap. It's used as disposable packaging and it's so reflective. I really like your thinking, Michael. We need to, you know, obviously we need to do it in a way that's durable. The last thing we want is for these things to break apart and then we just have even more plastic in the ocean, right? So, and Dr. Yatow at Harvard has a pretty cool concept for durable glass, floating glass mirrors. But we've explored a lot of different possibilities, and see, this is why we need collective superintelligence. We need to bring in the mechanical engineers, the ocean engineers, right, the material scientists, the manufacturers, the, you know, on and on and on and on, the climatologists who understand, the wave engineers who understand wave dynamics and wind and rain and weather and snow and ice and all these things that could potentially be disruptive. Anyway, so I was just given kind of a, I was given a topical recap. So on we go. Sister Ivy had to duck out, but she'll be back. Anyway, that's all part 2 of Design and Build the Butterfly. So topic number 8 is part 2, is building out all these solutions, right, that will finally stabilize the ship. And then part 3, the butterfly comes home. That's really after we've fully implemented and gotten it all built out. And now the world is at a new kind of steady state. That's when we can finally, you know, come home and proverbially go to sleep, you know, get some rest, chill out, you know, take some bong hits, get some rest, and then say, okay, part 3 is, all right, we wake up the next day and the world is now working again. And now where do we go from here? And at that point, we'll all be like, you know, weary soldiers at the end of World War II. Good news, the war is over. And now, what do we do now? Right? We've been spending the last several years just working, toiling. And what's next? You know, what's next for the world? We know what to do in a world that doesn't work. That's what we're doing right now. We're building the quilt and the collective superintelligence and figuring out solutions for part 1, part 2, part 3 of the butterfly. Working. What do we do when that work is done? That's part 3. And that'll be a great problem to have, right? We're not there yet by quite a ways. We've got plenty of work to do. But anyway, but in terms of topics 7, 8, and 9 are exactly why we need collective superintelligence, right? And topic number 4, topics 4, 5, and 6 are about the 3 phases of collective superintelligence. Topic 5 is phase 1, topic 6 is phase 2, topic 4 includes phase 3. It's just the overview plus the vision, because we start with the vision and then we kind of say, okay, what do we need to build first? Well, first is phase 1, Chrysalis calendars, right? Phase 2, topic 6, is the universal calendar, the quilt, universal taxonomy, and the beginning of planetary governance. Okay, and then there's a 10th topic, which topic 10 is very similar to topic 5. It is it's a subset of topic 5. Topic 5 is Chrysalis calendars. Topic 10 is our Chrysalis calendar, singular, right? See, topic 5 focuses on all the Chrysalis calendars as a topic. Topic 10 is where we finally bring it to step 1 for us, or the next step for us, which is building out our own calendar, which is what we're doing right here in this meeting. We're building out the meetings that will populate our own calendar, right? That's where we're at, right here, right now. So, okay, so should we play some glass beads? We got James, Michael, Jamin, and still haven't heard from Marco and Alan, and that's okay. So I'm just going to call on you guys, and we'll just time it 1 minute each. Or why don't you guys just talk for whatever period? Yeah, I don't even have to time it. Michael, James, whoever's ready, please jump in and just share. And if you want to pause recording at any time, we can do that too. Share your thoughts, your ideas, your inspirations, your questions, your comments, your objections, your what about this? This is missing, you know, or I don't agree with that. Anything, just share away.
Well, like you were saying, I think we should concentrate on phase one of number 5, like which is our Chrysalis calendar, like the Chrysalis calendars. I know it's in phase 5, but our Christmas calendar. So that's 10, like, which is a subset of 5 anyway. But we should, I think we like what we should be prioritizing is concentrating on populating that now our calendar, like getting it as populated as quick as possible, and figure out a way of why as we're populating it, maybe as whoever's coming in new, like connect the population as it gets acclimatized, you know what I mean, so that it's easier for newcomers to see the instant kind of benefits to the whole scenario. You know what I mean? So, like, whoever we start to put into the calendar now, like, we make sure that each of them are kind of connected. There's a form of connection visible for newcomers to see that there's, you know, way more added benefits than just being on a platform themselves with their own network. You know what I mean? That they can see the benefits for themselves and for the good of all. Like. So we should have a way of make sure that everyone is connected once they come in, like links shared, in other words. Like.
I'd like to hear more about. Let me tell you what I'm hearing, and then I'd like to hear more, James. So what I'm hearing is number one, get our calendar built out, right? Build out our own schedule and all these topics and all these meetings. Okay, I think you're breaking up a little bit, James, but that's okay. We'll go with it. But number one, build out our own calendar. Number two, have an easy onboarding process for people to be able to come and, you know, come to our meetings and get to know us and connect. And then there was something about linking their own network or something like that I didn't really get clear on. So if you could share some more on that, and anything, just share away, James.
No, as part of the onboarding, let them see, kind of have some way of letting them see that there are, you know, well, you know, maybe depending on the topic of the conversation, like that, whatever they're coming in with, or their network, whatever the topic of their network is, that once they start to sign up and they state what their network is in their sign up sheet, we say that there's a kind of something that picks up on that then, and automatically when they come in and they're only new, in order to help them get acclimatized, a few links would be sent out to networks that are already on the calendar who are already used to the whole situation. Links of like this new network is coming in, it has similar you know, conversations that you're having. Maybe you might want to welcome them or something, or, you know, get them acclimatized, get them to see that there's instant benefits and good connections available, that kind of a way. Maybe I'm not, but I think I'm explaining it that way. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is basically very consistent with the vision of Trove, right? Which is all about bringing different networks together, giving them a calendar space, a space for their projects, a space for their members to say, this is who I am. This is what I'm interested in as an individual, as well as what a given network or community is all about, comprised of a bunch of those individuals. And so let's discuss all this with Vincent tomorrow, right? At our weekly Vincent meeting, starting at 10:30 Pacific time. Because fortunately he's working on a lot of this in parallel, he and his team.
Yeah, if I might add, Marco and I were trying to explore Trove Catalyst, and we could not have access to certain areas. For example, he could not send me an invitation to join. So.
Oh, I think we fixed that yesterday. He told me about that, and so I made him an admin. So he should be able to, and I can do that for you if he hasn't already, but we'll.
No, I'll speak with him tomorrow or later tonight. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, great. Very good.
Well, maybe I'm overthinking it with the connections part. So for our calendar, I suppose you're right, that was more of what kind of Vincent's thinking about. But primarily anyway, my main comment is that we need to concentrate on populating our own calendar anyway. Like maybe reach out to a few of the people that were on the press conference, you know, and see if they're still interested in them wanting to be on it and everything else like that. Like, but basically populate it anyway, that's the main thing. Like.
Yeah. I'm all for that. What I'm, so with the 10 topics that we've listed in the chat, what I'm basically thinking is we would have 10 different meetings throughout the week. Each of those 10, we'd meet every single week on each of those 10.
Tuesdays are pretty unpopulated with projects. It seems like, Tuesdays online seem to be available. Without scheduling. Thank you.
Yeah. So the 3 big days that I'm on Zoom generally are Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And so that's when I would want to schedule these, 10 topics on those 3 days. And indeed, Tuesdays and Wednesdays are pretty open for this Zoom room. But the idea of the Chrysalis calendar is that we also have multiple Zoom rooms going. So whether somebody wants to schedule a meeting on the Chrysalis calendar in their own Zoom room, that's totally fine too. They're certainly welcome to schedule it here in this Zoom room. And even if this Zoom room becomes totally full, 24/7, we just open up another Zoom room. And another one after that, another one after that.
Yeah, I'd be willing.
And whoever.
I'd be willing to help do that for the next Zoom room or something too.
Thand you. You'd be willing to help, like, host it.
There's a cost to it. I'd be glad to pay for the cost for that.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Thank you. That's very, very generous of you. Yeah, and in fact, you could even, if you wanted to, you could host it. In other words, kind of have, have one of your devices connected to that Zoom room, if you wanted, because you're available quite a bit. Here, okay, resuming recording. So as we're building out, before we were able to actually build out the quilt, what I'm kind of thinking of is we have essentially like an association, like a trade association of patches. It's like, hey, our intent is to all stitch together as this big quilt, but before we can do that, let's get to know each other, right? Let's meet each other. Let's have meetings. Let's talk about what we're setting out to co-create together, right? So an association of patches before we build a quilt.
Yeah, I would be
Right.
glad to host a meeting. I'd be glad to host a local meeting after I get the word out with the article. I'd be glad to call together after another month, a real meeting in a real place after COVID breaks and talk and do a talk on this, kind of like a TED Talk idea locally. And I'll report back as to how it went and to see how many people come to our campfire.
Awesome. Awesome. Beautiful. All right. I'm going to pause recording.